let me tell you why I am here. ComScore is a company that provides a lot of analytics on consumer audiences and advertising on digital media. And so we tend to, our customers tend to be media companies, all the internet companies, mobile companies, et cetera, as well as advertising agencies and marketers as well. And in essence, at the end of the day, what clients are asking from us in terms of intelligence is intelligence that would lead to help the industry monetize better, help the media owner sell more advertising and monetize their readers, viewers, et cetera, or help the marketer extract the maximum benefit out of the consumer that they get access to through mobile media or digital media. So one of the very exciting things about the mobile industry and the rise in mobile is that the mobile device creates the intersection between location and a consumer. And so for the first time, it is possible to be able to interact with a user taking into account where they are. And that piece of information is a very powerful piece of information that has a lot of business impact. I remember when I started my career, we used to analyze data on advertising in the consumer packaged goods industry, and we would look at a TV campaign, and the sales lift on a TV campaign would be in the 5 to 10% range. Say you average it 7%. Then you go and you have something that's more location sensitive, such as an in-store circular or an end-aisle display, and then you will get lifts in those cases somewhere between 70% to 300%. So being able to reach the consumer at the time when they are intending to do something obviously has a very powerful effect, a multiplier effect that frankly the location, it represents really the value of the location information in terms of increasing the value of a consumer exposure. So we all know that mobile is hot. We expect that in the US alone, the mobile advertising market will exceed $20 billion. And of that, surprisingly, less than half is spent with location knowledge in mind. So given the growth and given how much room there is in terms of mobile advertising that could be targeted with location data, there is kind of a lot of room to grow, and it's a good opportunity for this industry. Now, when, as marketers are adopting the platform, the mobile platform to reach consumers, they now have more expectations. People don't write big checks without trying to understand what are those big checks delivering for them. And so when we ask people, this is, I guess, a survey that I want to thank XAD for providing. When you ask them, what do you need? What is it that you would like to know? People would, 46% would say, I would like to reach a specific target audience. 37% want to be able to reach a specific audience at a specific location. 31% want to be able to customize the message to the location. And finally, 30% actually are asking for, what did I get for my investment? So what is the effectiveness of the advertising of my investment on buying this medium? Because of the heritage of mobile coming from the PC internet, the industry has to typically contend with a history where ads used to be, direct response ads used to be evaluated on the basis of click-through rates. And so to some extent, everybody kind of thinks that if I have an ad and somebody doesn't click on it, then it doesn't really have an impact. Well, that's actually really pretty far from the truth. When you have an ad, let's say in a magazine, and somebody looks at it, they don't do anything. They don't click on it. When they see an ad in an in-store circular, they don't click on it, but they see it and they act on this information later. So the fact that a user is able to see something that is on their mobile device and that is location-based, the click-through rate fails to capture the latent impact of that exposure on the consumer. And we've done a lot of studies actually about this in the PC-based internet, and it actually turns out that the focus on click-through rate, beyond the fact that it is only a partial picture of how consumers react, there seems to be a class of consumers, somewhere around 20%, that have a tendency to click on things, and there are about 80% of the users don't click on anything. And it turns out that the 20% that click are not necessarily the most desirable audience that a marketer is looking for. How do we answer the question of, what did this ad do for me? I mean, ideally, there is a methodology that can be used, which is which the medium fortunately lends itself very well to it, and that's setting up quasi-experiments where you are looking at people who get exposed to an ad and you compare them to a control group of a similar type of people, and then you have some kind of a metric of success that you'd want to use, and you'd see if the exposure has had an impact on that metric. So in terms of methodology, the simplest methodology is actually look at the difference between the two and basically see what % increase do you get in that metric. And if the control group is chosen well, meaning that they are selected using the same criteria as the exposed group, then that's actually a fair representation of what the ad impact is. So that's a simpler way of doing it, and frankly, probably the most understandable way, particularly for a lot of marketers. There are some more sophisticated ways where you can actually take a look at how many times a consumer got exposed. So I'm going to compare the people who got exposed 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times versus no time, and then I build a more sophisticated statistical model that will give me kind of not only the lift, but it will qualify it by how often do consumers see the ad and what's the value of a repeat exposure. So there are a lot of KPIs that could be used in evaluating mobile advertising. There are 4 KPIs, and I'm going to rank them from the least desirable or the least useful to the most useful. The first is you can basically survey people after they get exposed to the ad, and you ask them, are you aware of this brand? Well, that turns out to be a pretty fuzzy metric. If I ask you, are you aware of BMW, you probably didn't need the ad to be aware of BMW. So it's not really, the impact of the ad is not going to be reflected by awareness. There is another technique, which is to ask you, well, do you intend to buy a car in the next 30 days? And if so, which of the brands? And if I see that actually the intent of the group that saw an ad for BMW is higher among the exposed group versus the control group, then I would say this is the impact in terms of purchase intent on BMW. That's valuable, but marketers really want not what people say they will do, they would like to know what they actually do. And so the closer you can get to behavior and measuring behavior rather than stated intent, the more valuable the information is. And so with the location data, you can actually track whether a consumer visited a particular point of sale, whether they visited a store, whether they visited the dealership, whether they visited a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. And this is a metric that comes actually with every ad exposure. You get the location, so you can tell whether the consumer either at the time of the ad or after the ad essentially ended up visiting the store, and you can see if there is a visitation lift. And at the end of the day, every business has in mind a value of a visit to my store. You know, a Walmart would know what is it worth to them to have a consumer visit their store, and a dealer would know what is it worth to them to have a consumer visit their dealership. And so in a sense, if you can get visitation lift, you are one step away from measuring sales. Then the last thing is sales lift. That's obviously the gold standard. That's what people are after. It's a little bit more complicated because essentially we are trying to do a match of an anonymous device ID with some offline sales data that could be coming through either credit card information or car sales information, et cetera, et cetera. It's difficult to do. It's a lot of legwork that needs to be done, and the translation, the connection, the linkage between that anonymous ad ID and a user ID in some purchase system is sometimes hard to achieve. So even though this last metric is probably the most preferred metric by marketers, it's actually much more difficult to do, much more expensive to get, and it takes time. So in terms of being practical, probably the visitation lift is one of those metrics that the medium can generate almost automatically with every campaign, and it is a very valuable piece of information for marketers. So this is for marketers that kind of commit to spend something and they want to know what they got for it. But we also know that there is $20 billion worth of advertising that's being spent on mobile, and they don't know ahead of time when they're spending whether it's going to work for them or not. So the question is, how do you use location-based information to spend more smartly, to optimize your spending? If you are going to spend $1 million on mobile, what is, out of the billions of impressions that are available there, what's the best way of doing it? And so I'm going to take you through a little bit of math that will make a lot of sense in just a little bit. Essentially, when we are targeting and we are using, let's say, location for targeting, or you're using any other means of targeting, one of the variables that's really important is the targeting specificity, and that's basically the size of your target audience that is delivered by the audience that gets advertised to. And when we start looking at ROI, it turns out that ROI is actually a function proportional to that specificity, proportional to the ROI per thousand that that ad would do, divided by the cost, CPM. So what that means is that if you are trying to choose, if you are basically buying some advertising impressions, if you're trying to choose and you have access to location data, as long as the CPM, the location targeted CPM can command a premium, because obviously you are reaching the needle in the haystack. And the question is, what is the maximum premium that it can be? And it turns out the maximum premium is the ratio of the specificity for location-based targeting versus totally untargeted impressions. And when you put that to practice, you will see that actually the specificities that you would get when you are doing location-based targeting are very, very high. So for example here, this is also XAD data. We took a look at how many users kind of were recorded on the system in the San Francisco metro area, I guess. 550,000 users were actually, there was some view about them that was recorded in the system. Then you basically say, okay, so if I am, let's say, a car manufacturer and I am interested in people who visit car dealerships, then from the 550, I go down to 14,700, which is less than, I don't know, I can't see it, about 2.6%. So right away, you have a very, very big increase in selectivity because you targeted on the basis of somebody who visited any car dealership. Now, if you want to target on the basis of a subsegment, then you are even more selective. So for example, if you're looking at luxury brands, then you're less than 1%. And if you want to look at a specific brand, then you're even a fraction of that. So there is a lot of power that that this funnel provides with the help of location-based information. Another category that we analyzed is retail. So for example, we're looking here at about 500,000 users in the Boston DMA. About 44% of them visited some kind of a department store during the week. And out of those, only 0.4% visited Target. So if I'm Walmart and I want to actually target consumers, guess what? I would have to spend, for every 100 impressions, I would reach only 0.4 users if I am untargeted. If I am targeted, on the other hand, I am zeroing in on the user that I'm going after. And if you actually work out the kind of the maximum premium that location-targeted CPM can command, in these two examples, if you're targeting luxury car shoppers, it's optimal to choose a location-based targeted ad as long as the premium is less than 48 times. So in other words, if you can buy on an open exchange, let's say ads at a CPM of $1, you can spend up to $48 and still come out ahead if you have a location optimized ad. And for retail, let's suppose that you have an advertiser that's trying to target the people who go to Target stores. Then the premium is optimal as long as it is below 7.5 times. So you can see that these are very, very big numbers. And taking an untargeted impression and then just adding the location-based information to it and taking action on that basis creates huge value, which gets reflected with this premium. In summary, I mean, it's very intuitive for marketers. They know that if you reach people at the right place, then you're going to be a lot more effective at finding the needle in the haystack. And we know that that's going to be increasingly driving the trends in advertising. But in order for the industry to succeed at driving monetization, we need to be able to deliver the metrics on the lift in the KPIs that they care about. And even without that information, there is actually information that is based on the location data of consumers that are in a system like XAD, where even ahead of time, you can optimize your targeting based on location, and advertisers can be sure that compared to another alternative, they are actually getting a better ROI with targeted ads. Thank you very much.